this kind of window where both of the folks are listening. And I'm wondering, for folks that don't know who you are, or even some that do, explain to people how you got your start. What sparked your interest in throwing parties for a living?
It actually was a funny story. I grew up in New York City. And when you are young in New York City, when I was about 12 in junior high school, actually, it's a funny thing because, as a kid, you want to start, doing something at night, going out a little later. Mm-hmm. And unlike if you live in the suburbs where you can go to the local mall or you can go to a field and just hang out or do whatever you want to do, in New York, there really isn't much. So I found that a lot of my peers at that time just didn't have anywhere to go. So I started throwing these parties at lofts when I was actually 13. When I just turned 13 was my first one, that we would move every week.
Now, when you say lofts, like this is like a private residence, it's like a warehouse space. What kind of a loft would you throw these parties at as a kid?
Anyone that would take us is a quick answer on that. Often there were artists and stuff who needed a little extra money, so they would rent it out.
I see.
So we weren't picky. We would take anything, any place that would take us.
I can imagine.
No one liked a lot of 13-year-old kids at the time. So we were lucky to get any place we could.
So you throw these parties, and they become pretty popular.
They did. It was, I didn't do it as a business at first. The first time I did it was just with a bunch of friends who wanted somewhere to go. So, I played football back then, so my football team was the security, and we just hired a DJ. And I remember it was a place that held like 200 people. It was on 52nd and 10th, the first one we ever did in a sound studio, actually. And when, I think the party started about 9, and by 8 o'clock, there were we estimated about 10 to 15,000 kids outside.
Whoa, 15,000 kids.
Yeah, they had to block, the cops had to block off 10th Avenue and 11th Avenue.
So how much money are you getting for that?
Oh, we didn't make much on that one because we couldn't get anybody in.
I see.
We got shut down very quickly by the cops, who were not thrilled that we shut down 2 avenues of the New York
for an unauthorized party.
Sure, of young kids.
Yeah.
So, that one didn't work out as well, but it certainly made me realize, this is a good business. I should do this more often.
So then, when did you decide, going from this precocious teenager throwing these illegal, unauthorized parties that tens of thousands of kids are showing up to, when did you decide that this is what you were going to try and do for a living?
Well, I guess it was a progressive thing. I started by doing kind of keg parties at that age. Getting older, when I got to be about 15 or 16, I started doing nightclubs, and I did a lot of the popular clubs of that time.
What were some? See, I've been out once in a while. My days of going out are probably long gone because of these crazy hours that I have to keep now. But what were some of the popular clubs of that time?
Oh boy. When I was 15, I was talking about 1985, 86. Nell's was just about to open, which I think was the most popular club at that time, in my personal opinion. There was the Tunnel in the original incarnation before Peter Gatien bought it, and I used to do both of those clubs at that time. When I turned about 16 or 17, my crowd finally got a little bit older, so I was able to do clubs. I started doing the whole club kid thing back in the Tunnel. I had done Thursdays there, and I was doing a night at Nell's, usually Tuesday or Monday.
Take me to now. What makes a club successful? What's a good nightclub? What are the ingredients? What does it take?
That's a great question. I think it takes a lot of things. It's not just one or two things. It's not like an easy answer. I think probably the most important thing, though, is the people.
The people that are coming.
Sure. I think it's the proper mix of people. I think when you have a nightclub that caters only to one kind of person, it's quite boring. I think you need, what's so great about, before my time, I was going to mention Studio 54, even though it was before my time. I went there once when I was, I think, 12 for the first. That was the first club I ever went to. When I was 12.
Wow.
That was
in its heyday.
Well, no. I was
heyday?
I was 12 in 1982.
I see. Okay. So the Steve Rubel era had
ended. He was an advisor, I think, at that time. Mark Fleischman had owned it, who became a friend of mine later. But yeah, I caught the tail end, but I still got the point. I mean, it was quite amazing. I could only imagine what it was like during the real heyday.
Sure.
But Studio 4 had a huge number of people, and what was so great about it is, the mix of people that you had. Socialites, you had musicians, you had actors, you had Europeans, you had artists, you had hipsters. It was such an interesting thing. If you look at the variety of people they had, and I think that although it doesn't work on that scale anymore, because not that many people go out like they used to back then.
Why is that? Why do fewer people go out?
I think it's a lot of things. Back then, drugs, people didn't realize cocaine and things like that weren't good for you. So people went out to do that. People also, I think AIDS was a big thing. I think back then you went out to have sex. Now it's not quite, it became not that simple at a certain point. So I think a lot of the excesses have changed. So it does. People don't go out in the same volume they used to.
Now, the first place I met you about 14 years ago was Veruca, 525 Broome Street, right? 525 Broome?
The old place.
Great place. Now, was that your first place?
Veruca was the first place I owned. I had done, promoted a lot of places. I'd done PR for a lot of places, and I had consulted on a lot of places before that. That was the first one I bought myself.
Veruca was such a great spot, and I was fortunate enough. Your old partner Tim was fortunate enough to, invite me there once in a while. And you'd never know who you'd see. I saw Christina Aguilera there one night. I would see David Wells. Practically had a bar stool with his name on it there, and it was such an interesting, as you say, an interesting combination of people that you'd see there in any given night. And from the bathroom attendant Santiago. Was he the bathroom attendant, Santiago?
Yeah.
And
good memory.
To the people that would go. And it was such a fun place. And the thing that I thought was interesting is how you came up with the name Veruca. How'd you come up with that?
That's a funny thing. We named it after Willy Wonka, the girl Veruca Salt.
That bratty girl.
Yeah, it was kind of a joke on our clientele that our clientele wants everything they want when they want it the way they want it. So that was why we named Veruca. A funny thing though, we knew, although we loved the name and went with it, it's a funny thing that in Latin, Veruca is actually a Latin word for a wart.
Oh my goodness!
So whenever people from Latin America would come in, they'd be like, "Do you know what the name means?" I'm like, "We do. We like the reference."
So you named it after a wart.
Oh, we named after Willy Wonka.
Unintentionally.
But, yeah.
Okay. Now, the thing I have to ask you, and we're gonna try and take a couple of quick calls here, and then because I know you have a wide variety of interests, and I want to talk a little bit about your career as a film producer as well. But the one thing that does kind of drive me crazy about a lot of these clubs, though. And if you're just tuning in, 5:30 in the morning, you're listening to AM 970 The Answer. We're talking with Noel Ashman. He's a New York nightlife impresario, entrepreneur, a legend. We'll find out what he's up to next. He's also a film producer. But the thing that does drive me crazy, and I think it does for a lot of people who might not be going out every night, but are kind of semi-casual goer-outers, is that so many of these clubs seem too loud and they seem too crowded. Now, is that by design? And what is the appeal of being in these clubs that are so loud that they hurt your eardrum, and you have to scream to have a conversation over music, and that you can't move because you're packed in like sardines? Tell me about those two aspects of the club business, too loud and too crowded. Or am I just like a fuddy-duddy? What's the deal?
Well, it's funny. Everyone has their own opinion on that. I think the older you get, I think I'm with you. The older you get,
you're with me, and you're in the club business.
The louder it gets sometimes. Well, in real nightclubs, right? I mean, nightclubs aren't as popular as they once were. Now it's more lounges and smaller spaces. But when you had big nightclubs, right now, EDM music's very in, which happens to be a very loud type of music, and the crowd, a lot of your experience is based around that. So that's one of the reasons I think it's particularly loud. Sometimes the lounge will be less loud.
Now, how about this? Now, there was a big controversy. You were the first person to bring bottle service to New York, right? The whole bottle service, if people don't know what we're talking about, it's when you order a bottle of vodka or something at a table and 4 or 5 people sitting around to drink. You were the first person to bring that to New York, right?
I was. Me and one other person kind of brought it at the same time. But Veruca, I believe, was the first club to actually offer bottle service, yes.
And what made you offer that all of a sudden? I mean, people had been going out for 40, 50 years, and nobody had the idea to have a bottle of booze sit around with 4 or 5 people. What made you offer that all of a sudden?
Well, it was a combination of a couple things. I used to go out in Europe a lot, which I still do. I still make sure to go there and kind of see what's happening. And in London particularly, and in Paris, bottle service was very common back then. Mm-hmm. and I saw it just watching it be done. It was just so much more convenient for the customer because as opposed to a waitress carrying 15 drinks and spilling them all over people, you could just have a bottle in your mixers brought to you. It's much more civilized and much better experience, I think, for the customer.
No, well, that does make sense. It makes you think. Makes you wonder why it wasn't done sooner. Now, with that in mind, Melinda Katz, who's now the borough president of Queens, but used to be a member of the New York City Council, she said that bottle service was not a good thing, and she proposed, this is going back a few years now, she proposed legislation that would outlaw the practice by some night spots of demanding that party goers purchase 2 or more bottles of liquor to guarantee a table. Now, this is what she said. She said, quote, "I believe the 2-bottle requirement is dangerous. Nobody's buying a $300 bottle of alcohol and leaving it." Now, her office did this sting where 8 out of 12 clubs in and around Chelsea, surveyed by her staff, imposed the bottle service requirement. Basically, what she was saying is that this bottle service encouraged people to binge drink. What do you say to that?
Well, I think that I think it has to be monitored like anything else, but I think that if you look at it overall, I think the practice works pretty well. There's certain clubs that do it to stick people with huge bills, et cetera, and I don't necessarily agree with that. But in general, I think the bottle service is a good thing, and I think that I believe when she talked about outlawing it was because there had been some problem with it at one point, or I think every time there's a little problem, changing everything that isn't always the answer.
Yeah, well, this is the problem with politicians is they grandstand, on the issue du jour. Now, I know you follow politics once in a while. You want to take a call or two on what folks are anxious to talk about?
Sure.
All right, 877-970-2999. If you have a question about the club business, if you wonder how you can get into one of Noel's clubs, you can call him and ask him what the dress code is, what else you have to do. 877-970-2999. Let us say hello first to Barbara in the Bronx. Wants to talk about the police. Barbara, good morning.
Hi, how are you? Good morning.
Good. I'm doing well. Thanks for getting up early for us, Barbara.
Yeah, well, when you got a Klitschko in your face, you got to get up.
What's a Klitschko? What's that?
The guy that dropped out of that Ukrainian race. I had the TV on, and I fell asleep to, I think it was British broadcasting.
Oh, okay. You should be falling asleep to the radio, number one, Barbara. And, number two, a lot of the folks that don't follow you geopolitical events like you and I do, they may remember Klitschko because he used to be the former heavyweight champion of the world, and his brother, I think, is still a boxing champion, actually.
Yeah, I got him confused with the brother.
Yeah, so do I.
They both did that.
Yeah, no, they were both boxers. But, so there you go. You have a Klitschko in your face and you're up. What's on your mind this morning, Barbara?
Well, he got a fire extinguisher in his face.
Beginning. Well, it's one way to keep
Yeah, well, don't forget your face guard. Just like don't forget your shield when you're a cop.
What's on your mind this morning, Barbara?
No, you said about the Inspector General and another layer. He said not to be redundant. That sounds like there's a problem right there with redundancy. You got to get rid of that if you want to clean anything up. But the question is, what do they really want to clean up? I think de Blasio wants to do that. He's got all the pressure from the people on his side because I don't think there's too many police cases when people end up dead because of, emotional, psychiatric combined with drugs, both illegal and pharmaceutical.
So, Barbara, you got me a little confused here. So, you're against an Inspector General? Is that what I'm?
I'm for it.
You're for it. Okay.
Has to do something.
All right. Well, there you have it. Now, explain to me succinctly, Barbara. Why are you for an Inspector General?
Well, he's claiming that it's going to be something different.
Well, what's the difference?
Other case is going. Well, there shouldn't. The district attorneys should not be involved in this.
Why not?
Because they always acquit the police and say they're not doing it. You were talking about the police rapes, and all those guys basically got off like regular rapes. Well, probably lighter than a regular rape.
Hang on, Barbara. Now they were acquitted not by the DA. The DA put them on trial. They were acquitted by a jury.
Yes. Okay.
So how is that the DA's fault that a jury acquitted them?
Well, because they stacked the jury.
Oh, well, but I don't think that's true, Barbara. I mean,
well, no, you believe the legal system is not
No, I don't. If you listen to me, Barbara, on a regular basis, nobody has more problems with the legal system than me. But my whole point is, I think
I can't get a lawyer because my stuff is like, I believe, civil involving a return of some property.
Yeah, well, so if you're a lawyer out there, Barbara in the Bronx is looking for you. Barbara, thanks for the call. What are your thoughts, Noel, as somebody that's dealt with the police in a different manner since you were 13 when they tried to shut down that party of yours? Do you think we need more oversight of the police? What do you think?
I don't. I think we have an incredible police force. I mean, I think that both Ray Kelly and Bill Bratton are two of the best we've ever had. And my personal opinion is that they do a great job.
Now, whenever, I'm sure every club, every bar, really, even most restaurants, they've had instances where the police come for some reason or another. Could be because of noise, could be because of anything. Have the police been pretty nice on the occasions that they've had to interact with you?
Absolutely. They're generally, as long as you have a place in good order and your people, you have the right people coming, etc. They've been very supportive, very helpful.
All right. Well, so when we come back, again, you can call us as well at 877-970-2999. When we come back, I'm going to ask Noel a little bit about the other hat that he wears as a film producer. Find out what he's up to, and we'll find out if there's any hot New York night spots in Noel's future. You're listening to Morano in the Morning here on AM 970, The Answer.
More wit and wisdom in just a moment with Morano on AM 970, The Answer.
This is Hugh Hewitt for townhall.com. Tuesday, March 25th will forever remain a key date in the history of religious liberty in America. That is the day the Supreme Court heard arguments from, among others, Paul Clement, the Beckett Fund, and the Alliance Defending Freedom, in the cases known as Hobby Lobby and Conestoga Wood. These cases demand that the court consider whether the federal government can oblige sincerely religious people to violate their consciences by making them use their corporations to pay for the morning after pill and other abortifacients they object to. The proponents of Obamacare claim corporations can't have religious views, but no fair person disputes that these companies are wholly owned by very devout people who strongly believe that abortifacients required by the government to be part of corporate health plans constitute deeply immoral behavior and the taking of unborn life. Let us hope that all 9 of the justices agree that the First Amendment still means what it says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof.
News, opinion, passion. This is AM 970, The Answer.
48 degrees with a light, steady rain coming down. Good Sunday morning. What's going on? We have the answer, and we've got more of Morano in the Morning coming up after the news right here on AM 970, The Answer. Governor Chris Christie says he fully embraces a report out that absolves him of any involvement in Bridgegate.
Christie sparred with reporters for over an hour after denying that the report was a whitewash of his office's involvement in shutting down lanes at the George Washington Bridge last September.
Part of the problem with all this is that all of us, you, me, and everybody, is now looking through the retrospectroscope. You're always smarter, and you always know more when you have that. We didn't have that then.
The governor also said that his mentor, Port Authority Chairman and former Attorney General David Sampson, was resigning immediately in order that the agency could be reformed. Terry Sheridan, New York.
You may have heard of the Staten Island clown mystery. Well, now it is history. A local Staten Island production company called Fuzz on the Lens has confirmed that they were responsible for all those clown sightings that in many cases terrified local Staten Islanders.
This initially started as a joke amongst friends. You know, we wanted to entertain our community. We wanted to entertain some of our friends. And then once we saw what, was happening before this broke any news, we said, maybe we can, try to get this bigger. And we went with a plan, and then we just kept going with it.
A new CDC report out shows that the Garden State has the highest autism rate in America at 1 in 45 kids. Executive Director Suzanne Buchanan of Autism New Jersey believes the state's skyrocketing rate can be partially explained by heightened awareness, access to knowledgeable doctors, and the state's reputation for outstanding support services.
There are probably more diagnosticians now than years ago, and all of our collective efforts have resulted in us doing a better job of identifying kids as early as possible.
The Islanders beat the Devils in sports. You now know what's going on. Chris Marara, AM 970, The Answer. Now back to more of Morano in the Morning.
Tweet us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. We're everywhere. AM 970, theanswer.com. 877-970-2999. It's Morano on AM 970, The Answer.
Oh,
you're still crazy after all these years. I'm not the kind of man who tends to socialize. I seem to lean on old familiar ways.
43 minutes after 5 o'clock, you're listening to AM 970 The Answer. I'm Frank Morano. My very, very special guest in studio, and I have to give him a lot of credit for that, because not a lot of folks are coming in studio at 5:40 on Sunday morning, is Noel Ashman. Noel Ashman is in the nightclub business, and he's a film producer, and he knows everybody. You can read page 6 or the gossip page of your choice any week, and you see Noel Ashman hanging around with celebrity after celebrities, and you know this fella, Paul Simon, huh?
Oh, I've met him a bunch of times. I grew up a couple blocks away from him.
And here's the question I've been dying to ask you, Noel, is obviously there are a lot of people in the nightclub business, a lot of people in the bar business, a lot of people who own lounges and stuff like that. But how is it, honestly, that you've gotten to know everybody? You know, every celebrity, every, business owner, you throw your name around, people, they genuflect. How is it that you got to that level that a lot of other folks in your industry haven't?
Well, thank you, first of all.
No, I mean, it's not me. Again, the New York Post called you one of the 5 most important New Yorkers. It's not me saying this. This is common knowledge. How is it that you got there that so few others did?
I don't know. I mean, I've done this for a long time, since I started when I was so young. So even though I'm not that old yet, I certainly have been doing it for almost 30 years. Because I started when I was 13. And I think you just meet people. I've done, I guess, between the clubs I've done and the events I've done, as well as, the film producing, I've certainly met a big variety of people. So I guess, it's one of the nice things about what I do. I get to meet a lot of different people and get a lot of different perspectives on
Now, no, before you came on, I gave my suggestion for the future of the New York nightclub business, and I want to hear your take, see if this is something you'll pursue. And that it's geared for people like me who want to go out, who enjoy a drink now and then, who enjoy meeting interesting people, but they can't, because of their hours or whatever else, we can't stay out late. Now, what about a New York nightclub that takes place in the afternoon, an afternoon club? What do you think?
It's funny you say that. There actually is a movement to do that somewhat now. There's a lot of brunches now, which are very kind of nightlife-y with loud music and stuff. So, yeah, people are doing that a little bit. There was one at the Plaza.
Really?
That was going like last year, sure.
So you got to give me a list. See, that sounds interesting. Yeah. We'll take your calls at 877-970-2999. I want to get into your role as a film producer. But Jim on the Lower East Side has a question. Jim, you're on with Noel Ashman. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing? How you guys doing?
Good.
I'd like to address the fellow you're talking to. How come they don't enforce the noise codes and the laws and codes regarding how many bars and clubs you can have on a particular street and things like that? I live on the Lower East Side, and it's over, 4,000? I forget the number. Over 4,000 bars and restaurants.
There are a lot of bars on there on the Lower East Side. And
I read in the paper once. We have the most in the city.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it. Now, you think that's too loud, Jim. Is that what you're saying?
They open up the doors. They open up like these swinging doors on top. They want the noise to filter out in the street. It's done intentionally to bring in customers. Now they're bothering everybody in the neighborhood.
Good question, Jim. Now, I imagine, Noel, this is something you've heard before. What do you say to folks like Jim on the Lower East Side? Tough? Or?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I sympathize with them. There are different types of clubs and different types of bars. At my places, we try to do a lot of things like to limit the noise, like soundproofing. We never would want sound going onto the street, emanating in the street ever. So we, hopefully, we hope to live well.
Are there club owners that do what Jim is suggesting, and that kind of do intentionally put the music and everything out there on the street, damn the neighborhood in an attempt to get folks to come into their place?
Sure, there are. If you take any industry, there are the good people and the bad people, and there's certainly people who do that. It's not legal to do, so usually the cops would enforce that if they're blasting music out.
Yeah.
Because there has to be a certain volume on the street. But it really is very hard to open a nightclub or a bar or a lounge or a restaurant or any business right now in New York.
Oh, because of the regulatory hurdles and the approvals and the permits needed?
Yeah, it's become very, very hard. And, I think you have to strike a balance, because while I sympathize with your caller there, that you certainly don't want to have loud music while you're trying to sleep, but at the same time, that's what makes New York great is the nightlife. New York nightlife brings in billions of dollars in revenue for the city, and it's people come here from around the world to experience it. So I think it's important that the city get behind it, but at the same time need to be tougher on bars that would do what your caller said, because certainly no one should be blaring music outside.
Now, thanks for the call, Jim. And you can call us as well at 877-970-2999. Let me ask you about this, Noel. How did you go from being so successful in the nightclub business, opening places of your own at a very young age, being a well-regarded promoter, being groundbreaking with things like bottle service? How did you go from that to being a film producer? First of all, what made you want to do that? And second, how did you do it? How did you make that leap?
Well, I've always been very interested in film. It's always it's been a big interest of mine. It's always kind of fascinated me since I was a young kid. I've watched a lot of movies, and I got into it because an old acquaintance of mine was kind of moved to LA and was becoming a producer, and asked me to get, and they called me and asked me to get involved. And at the time, I was like, "Hey, I'm a bar owner. I'm not a film producer." And he kind of explained to me that, well, the skills you need for both are very similar. It's it's raising money. It's being able to brand something. It's being able to you understand what works and what doesn't. Have your pulse on pop culture and society. So he kind of convinced me to do it, and I loved it. That was the first movie I did. It was called Speedway Junkie. Gus Van Sant had executive produced it, and it was a good friend of mine, actually, Jesse Bradford, starred in it along with Daryl Hannah, Patsy Kensit. And it was a great movie. I really enjoyed it, and it was a great experience doing it.
Now, when you're producing a film and you have a star like Daryl Hannah that's in the picture, how much interaction do you have with Daryl Hannah? Is it more you're involved with the business side, or is it more of a collaborative relationship? Do you get a lot of interaction with somebody like her?
It depends on who it is. I mean, Daryl's not someone I'm particularly close with, but other people in the movie were. It depends. I mean, a lot of what my partners kind of want me for is to handle a lot of the talent and stuff somewhat. So depending on the film, depending on what we're doing, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
She still looks great, Daryl Hannah, doesn't she?
Absolutely. Yeah. She's a great actress. Certainly.
Is she nice though? She is a good actress. Is she nice?
Yeah, I think she's very nice.
Yeah. Now your company, your film production company, Co-op. I didn't realize this. You actually are partners with the one and only Jeffrey Tambor, right?
I am.
Now, Jeffrey Tambor, for people that may not recognize the name, they definitely recognize the face. He plays George Sr. on probably one of my favorite sitcoms, Arrested Development. He was in the Hangover trilogy. He was in There's Something About Mary. He's been in everything. He was on the Larry Sanders Show. He's done it all, really. He's great in everything. How did you hook up with Jeffrey Tambor? How did that come to be?
Well, the guy who founded my production company, which I'm a smaller member of it, he really runs. His name is Bob Kravitz, and he is very close with Jeffrey, and it kind of brought him in, brought myself in, and a couple other people, and we kind of partnered up, different people from the arts and different.
What's Jeffrey Tambor like?
Kind of quiet.
He is quiet.
A very nice guy. Yeah, very unassuming, nice, very, very nice guy.
All right, but before we break, Noel, I'm going to ask you to stick around for a couple more minutes. Now, I want to ask you about this. You're producing. I read that you were producing a project involving Lilo Brancato. Now, Lilo Brancato, a lot of folks in our audience may remember from his role as Colosimo in A Bronx Tale, may remember him from his work in a great episode of The Sopranos. He participated in a robbery in which a police officer, Daniel Enchetegui, was shot and killed. Ultimately, Lilo Brancato went to jail. He admitted that he had a drug problem. Just got recently released from jail. Many of the acting community say they don't want anything to do with him. They're just kind of done with him after doing that. But you've said you're going to work with him again on something.
Well, I just had done a video. We just shot it recently for a Russian singer named Natalie Yura. Mm-hmm. That I was producing, and initially Lilo was supposed to be one of the actors in it. We had a bunch of them. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do it because of his schedule. He actually got booked on another film. And yeah, there was definitely some backlash about that, and I very much understand it. There were a lot of people in the police community that were very upset, and I'll say, listen, Lilo's been a friend of mine for almost 20 years. I mean, since he did a Bronx Tale. Since kind of right after that, we became very close, and Lilo's been a good,
Is that the proper pronunciation of his name? Lilo, not Lilo?
Yeah, it's Lilo.
Okay,
Lilo.
gotcha.
Lilo Brancato. I've known him for a long time, and he's always been a real good friend to me. Anytime I had ever needed him for anything, he's been there without asking. And he's I know him to be a good-hearted guy. What happened was disgusting. It was horrible. I never agreed with his drug use, and me and him had lots of fights about that over the years that I tried to get him to stop and explain to him how bad it was. And, the poor officer who lost his life that night, me and Lilo had a lot of fights about it. And, certainly I don't agree with what happened that night. I mean, I think it's important to know that he didn't have a gun that night. He wasn't armed. But him even being there to in any way have contributed to a police officer's death is just despicable.
In general, though, you think maybe he paid his dues, paid his debt to society, and now has earned the right to earn a living again?
Yeah. I mean, I think he spent almost a decade of his life in jail. Which look, and he should have. I think I'm a huge supporter of the New York Police Department, and I think that it is they do an incredibly good job. They're one of the best in the world, and police officer getting killed, makes me sick. It really does. And him being there tonight as a friend of his made me sick. But he didn't shoot the guy.
Yeah.
And I think he went through our justice system, and he got a very stiff sentence, and he spent, as I said, a decade of his life in jail. He's still on parole. He, everything's monitored, and I like to think that people in life deserve a second chance.
Food for thought from Noel Ashman. We'll continue with Noel Ashman right after this. You're listening to AM 970, The Answer. I'm Frank Morano.
More wit and wisdom in just a moment with Morano on AM 970, The Answer. The Michael Medved Show.
The problem for President Obama has been this entire sour tone to his presidency, the inability to work at all with the opposition, or to articulate anything like a coherent policy. Where has the president succeeded?
The Michael Medved Show. Afternoons at 3 on AM 970. The Answer.
I will never forget the day my son Jeremy told me he hated me and slammed the door in my face. I'm behavioral therapist Janet Lehman. Behavior problems can turn the child you love and your life into a nightmare. That's why my husband James and I created the Total Transformation, the step-by-step program that shows you how to fix the worst behavior problems and get your child to respect and listen to you again. No matter what the behavior, defiance, backtalk, angry outbursts, disrespect, we can help you stop it. Now you can get the Total Transformation for free. All you need to do is get the program and let us know how it works for you. You can keep it forever for free.
Limited number of free programs available. Call now. 1-800-345-2159. 1-800-345-2159. That's 1-800-345-2159. 1-800-345-2159.
Breaking news and local news. Find it on our website, am970theanswer.com. 877-970-2999. It's Morano on AM 970. The Answer.
Baby child, tied it up on your reins, you're running wild.
57 minutes after 5 o'clock. Good morning, everybody. I'm Frank Morano, finishing our conversation with film producer and nightlife impresario Noel Ashman. So, Noel, everybody's on pins and needles. Everybody wants to know, what's your next venture? What ground are you going to break in the New York nightclub scene next?
Well, I'm going to open a kind of small private lounge in about a month or so that we are working on. It'll be a lounge with a food lounge kind of experience.
Anything more you can tell us about anything else? The decor, the name, where it's going to be, anything?
Well, it's going to be. It's actually being designed by one of my partners, Michael Bregman, who's also the film producer who produced Carlito's Way and The Bone Collector and many other movies. And a guy by the name of Steve Lewis, who's a very nightlife guy who's been around for many, many years. So they're kind of co-designing it. And it's going to be it's small, about 150, 200 people.
If that's not a tease, I don't know what is. No, thank
Downtown.
you so much. Downtown. You heard it here, folks. Thank you so much for coming in, Noel.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I know it's early. I know it's tough, or late for you, but thank you again for coming in. We'll continue here on AM 970 The Answer. We'll talk speed cameras next. You want to comment on any portion of my conversation with Noel, call us at 877-970-2999. In the meantime, as Tommy Gioli would say, save America and vote a lawyer out of office. You're listening to Morano in the Morning.
AM 970, The Answer.
Hi, this is Jack from Danson Jewelers. For over 30 years, we've been the destination of choice in the New Jersey, New York area for the finest in engagement rings and wedding bands. Our showroom, one of the largest independent showrooms in the metropolitan area, displays over 15 superior watch brands, including Hamilton, Mido, Bulova, Accutron, and Luminox, along with a large selection of quality certified diamonds. We at Danson Jewelers are a proud retailer of Gabriel & Company bridal jewelry. Danson Jewelers specializes in extraordinary expert custom jewelry design and can repair jewelry on site. If you have any gold, diamonds, or silver to sell, come visit us at Danson Jewelers, where you'll leave with top dollar. And when you visit us, mention AM 970 The Answer or W.